history of my 25 years as I traveled through the Navy. I entered the Navy in 1960 in Colombia and traveled and ended up in Bermuda in 1961 during the Cuban Crisis. And many of you are aware of the Cuban Crisis. It was a trying time, and it came very close. Most people don't realize how close it came to an actual confrontation. But persevere, and our military, we won. And you're free today because of that. In our highlights, I was stationed in Bermuda, and to show you the things that God has given me in my life as a reward for being a faithful servant. First, he let me meet a young lady in Easter of 1962. And God help us, she's still with me 54 years later. So you can tell she does good, she takes good care of me, so you can see. And then in April, in 1963, I transferred to Brunswick, Maine, to a squadron called BP-26. Now, all these things you'll see as I bring up the people that I've elected today to highlight. And in 1966 in Maine, my daughter was born. In 1967, I transferred to Luther, Bahamas, to a naval facility there for 2 years. In 1970, my son was born in Patuxent River, Maryland. And in 1976, the military knew what they were doing. They sent me to the United States Army Sergeant Major's Academy. And I'm a Navy guy, and I'm not used to doing all those things. But I learned that I have a great deal of respect for all those in the other branches of service. And it takes one to be a whole. And then I went to Italy for 3 years, then in various special operations commands and security for the last few years of my tour. Squadron rotated to Vietnam. And we all stayed together. That's one thing about the military. We have a very close family. We talk, we communicate, we share experiences with each other. And I went in one day on the 1st of February, and then they were saying, well, the squadron's doing great. And then on the 6th of February, I got this sad news that Lieutenant Commander Bob Maglio and his crew had crashed. They were shot down. We don't know who did it, but it happened. We had 12 souls lost in that. They were great men. I knew them all. We shared life together. And then the following April, another crew was shot down. Another 12 people. And you know, we ask ourselves, what for? God is in mercy. Well, the answer is yes, because we all know that for everything that goes on, God has a plan, and that's where we go. So we all stayed together and shared that. Now, also in BP-26, as you mentioned, the highlight of today is I was fortunate enough and blessed to meet a young man, a lieutenant, by the name of Robert S. Fant. Robert Fant was my tactical coordinator. He and I sat side by side on the plane, and we functioned together as a crew. And in November of 1966, we were deployed to Iceland, and Bob got word that his fiancée has decided that they no longer needed to be together because she didn't want to be a part of his life and travel and be subjected. She was more, I would need to stay at home, I can't do these things. So that was fine, and that destroyed Bob, and Bob, he confided in us that he had decided it's time to go do something exciting. So exciting he did. He ended up going to change his designator, and he became an RIO in the F4 program. He basically flew, his first flight was in F4J, and he flew some missions in the south, but then his first mission over Hanoi, he was shot down. His pilot was lost, and Bob survived. He was all crippled and broken up, and the Vietnamese drug him through the countryside and through various camps. He had a broken elbow, he had a broken knee, and the Vietnamese set those with no anesthesia at all. So that's his life he goes through. But the good news is that Bob went and he ended up in Hanoi Hilton, as we commonly call it today. It was the main prison function in Hanoi. And he was cellmates with John McCain. We all know John. And Bob, he survived 5 years of that. And he stayed in touch with us through various channels. And when he came home in 1973, when the POWs were released, he came in, he went to the military hospitals, and they did a medical check on him, and they let him go, said he could go home. He called me, and I was in Brunswick Station at the time. He says, I want to come home. Call the crew together. And we did. We did. And in my kitchen, when he walked through the door, this is the light of God, because he's there. And he communicated to us that it was because of us, in remembrance of us, that he survived, in part, in addition to having God on his shoulders. They had their Bible lessons. They communicated with tap tap on the wall. You all heard that. Well, Bob was there, and we all had our bracelets at the time. You remember the bracelets during that time frame. And we all collected those and gave them to Bob. He still has those, by the way. I had the fortune of talking to Bob this past Friday when I asked him if I could talk about his story, because that's how we are. We stay in touch. Matter of fact, we'll be in Maine together probably sometime in August.